Hey, listener name, we're diving into some strong opinions about resource control and sovereignty in South America today.
You're right, it's a powerful read.
You've sent over a fascinating document, Masa de Resistencia y recursos nacionales estratégicos.pdf, and it does not hold back on its views about Argentina's resources.
This document doesn't just lay out facts, it presents a perspective we can then analyze.
Exactly. And the very first line is like a mission statement. Whoever controls the rivers and seas holds political and economic power.
And what's striking is the document's assertion that this fight for control has become much more nuanced.
That's quite a way to kick things off. It argues that South America, especially the Plata Basin, has always been at the heart of this struggle.
It's less about brute force these days and more about subtle influence, even mind control, as it claims.
That's where I thought, okay, this is getting really interesting. It argues that Argentinians, and by extension other South Americans, are being conditioned to believe they lack what it takes to control their own destiny.
It's a bold statement for sure.
Almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
But if we strip away the charged language, there's a valid point about narratives. The stories a nation tells itself about its capabilities and limitations absolutely shape its path. Whether these narratives are intentionally imposed or simply ingrained over time is the real question.
And this document doesn't shy away from pointing fingers. It uses the term chipayos, historically, Indian soldiers under foreign command, to describe those it sees as serving foreign interests within Argentina.
Yes, and the document alleges that these tipayos aren't always aware of the role they play. They're embedded in media, finance, even unions, unknowingly advancing agendas that benefit external powers more than the Argentinian people.
So, connecting the dots here, are these CPAOs unknowingly perpetuating the mind control by reinforcing those limiting narratives we talked about?
That's the implication, yes.
Hmm.
And to illustrate this, the document highlights a 1995 report from the Organization of American States, the OAS, about something seemingly mundane, transportation infrastructure.
That's what threw me at first. Like, how does a transportation report become this central to a claim about external control?
Well, this 1995 OAS report
Okay.
acts as a bit of a villain in the document's narrative. It paints a picture of seemingly innocuous language with a efficiency and integration, masking a deeper agenda.
Okay, so it's like read between the lines. What specifically about the report's recommendations does the document find so problematic?
Right.
Hmm.
On the surface, the report promotes things like streamlining regulations,
Right.
attracting foreign investment, improving infrastructure, all things that sound beneficial for a developing economy.
Right. At first glance, it seems like they're trying to help Argentina modernize and compete on a global scale.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But the document urges us to ask, efficiency for whom? If the transportation network is primarily optimized for extracting resources to foreign markets, does that truly benefit the Argentine people? Or does it primarily benefit multinational corporations?
I see where they're going with this. It's about who ultimately profits from these efficiency measures. Does it uplift local communities or just make it easier for foreign entities to take what they want?
Precisely. The document claims the OAS report's vision would make it harder for Argentina to control its own destiny, not easier.
That's a bold claim. Give me an example. How could improving infrastructure actually diminish Argentina's control?
One word, privatization. The report advocates for deregulation and privatization of key infrastructure. Now, this is often presented as a way to attract investment and reduce bureaucracy. But the document argues it can lead to essential decisions about development being taken out of the hands of the Argentine government and handed to foreign corporations.
So it becomes a question of who's really in the driver's seat when it comes to shaping Argentina's economic future.
Exactly. And this ties into a larger point. The document emphasizes the need to find a balance. Attracting foreign investment is important, yes, but not at the expense of local control and self-determination.
It's like walking a tightrope, right?
Yeah.
You want the benefits of global trade and investment, but you don't want to become overly reliant on external forces that might not always have your best interests at heart.
Precisely. And this is where the document transitions from critique to proposing alternative models.
Okay.
It holds up projects like the Magdalena Canal as a prime example of the type of development it champions.
Right. We touched on that earlier. This canal connecting Argentina's interior directly to the sea, it's like the antithesis of the OAS report's vision in the document's eyes.
Right.
But it also mentions other initiatives, right?
It does. It points to a range of approaches, from large-scale projects to grassroots movements, all pushing for a different development model, one that prioritizes sustainability, social justice, and local control.
So this Magdalena Canal is just one example of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
What other things are they putting forward?
Well, one thing that they stress a lot is this idea of food sovereignty.
Okay.
And so they really advocate for more local control
Right.
over food production, over how it's distributed,
That makes sense.
as opposed to being reliant on these globalized systems
Right.
that can sometimes leave countries vulnerable.
Especially for a country with such a strong agricultural history like Argentina.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, making sure that you can feed your own people first,
Yeah.
and that you're keeping more of those economic benefits within your own borders.
Right. Yeah, it's that added value thing again, isn't it?
Exactly. And you know,
Instead of just shipping it all out.
this actually connects to a lot of the conversations that are being had more broadly
Mm-hmm.
about sustainable agriculture, about agroecology.
Yeah.
It's all about recognizing that a healthy environment and social justice
Mhm.
are completely intertwined with economic development.
It's not just about growing more food, it's about growing it the right way
Precisely.
and making sure that it's benefiting the people.
Yeah, it's about, are you
It's
creating
local.
sustainable livelihood?
Right. Not
Are you supporting local communities?
Yeah, not just giant corporations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. And then along those lines, they also talk a lot about investing in education,
Okay.
in technology and innovation.
Right.
And this is where they start to sort of paint this picture of what a more self-reliant Argentina could look like.
Right.
You know, instead of just exporting raw materials,
Right.
they're saying, why not process those materials here?
Add value.
Add value, manufacture goods, develop new technologies all within Argentina.
Right. So it's not just about Argentina for Argentinians. It's about Argentina by Argentinians as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
That's a good idea.
It is a good idea.
But, obviously putting that into practice.
Right.
Easier said than done, I'm sure.
And they acknowledge this.
Right.
You know, they recognize that this would require a really, really long-term commitment.
Right.
And it's not just about willpower either.
No.
It's about facing down some pretty powerful interests, both within Argentina and outside of Argentina that benefit from the way things are now.
That's the thing about the status quo, isn't it? Like, it's always going to be easier to keep things the same, right, than to actually make a meaningful change.
And that's why they emphasize that this has to be driven by people.
Yes. It has to be driven by grassroots movements,
Mm.
by citizen engagement, by holding leaders accountable, people realizing that they do actually have power in this.
Absolutely.
They don't have to just wait for somebody else to make the change.
Exactly. It's about education.
Yeah.
It's about raising awareness. It's about organizing. And, this document itself is a part of that process. It's about
Yeah.
getting people to think critically about these issues.
Well, listener name, I'd say we've really gone in depth today.
We really have.
From the history of resource control in South America
Yeah.
to alternative visions for a more just and sustainable future.
And what I think is so fascinating is how this document, which is, specifically focused on Argentina,
Yeah.
it highlights these tensions that we see playing out all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who controls resources? Who benefits from their use?
These are questions that are relevant to everybody.
Exactly.
And as always, we encourage you, our listeners, to keep exploring these topics.
Yes.
Don't just take our word for it. Dig into the source material yourself. Ask your own questions. Engage in respectful dialogue about the kind of world that we all want to live in.
Because ultimately, the future isn't something that just happens to us.
Right.
It's something we actually create together.
That's a great note to end on. So until next time, keep asking those tough questions and keep the conversation going.